Elisabeth Frink's working methods are very apparent in the work you see in this exhibition. The earlier work from 1952 through the 50s into the early 60s was made often using an armature to create the legs on the birds, on the figures. And this armature would have been made out of iron rod, and then she would use materials such as chicken wire to create more of the form. Wet plaster, but not too wet, along with objects such as bits of wood, hessian soaked in plaster, to build up a figure very, very quickly. Once it was dry, she would use chisels and other tools to carve and create forms that she wanted. So many of the indentations that you see in some of the early work, such as vulture, are created using tools, but some are just naturally created through the formation and build-up of the different materials. Later in life, she used the wetter plaster to create the more smooth surfaces that you see in some of the works, such as goggle heads with their smooth noses, their features, the eyes, the goggles, and on the flat surfaces such as the mirage birds 1 and 2. Elisabeth Frink was born in 1930 and grew up in the Suffolk countryside near Thurlow. She was 9 years old when the Second World War broke out, and living near an airfield, the war was very visible and apparent to her and had a profound influence on her life and her practice as a sculptor. She was very strong about the ideas behind her work. They all came from inside. She never drew from life, she never sculpted from life. You'll see with many of her works, such as Dead Hen, they show the damaged, the twisted legs, the kind of distraught kind of themes that must have influenced her. At the beginning of the exhibition, there's a whole group of heads which are detached from the body and are quite strange, prehistoric-looking objects that could be bones or fossils. Frink continued to find inspiration in the head, considering it the centre of emotion and the seat of the soul. From the early heads in the exhibition, we move on to a whole group of bird-like forms. Instead of more realistic birds such as the vulture and the dead hen that you see earlier on, these are more strange, like walking birds with these very long legs, and they're kind of cross between birds and stalking beasts. They're real predators. They're quite dark, hunched over figures, which are all very sinister in a way. Next to the birds, we have a large piece called Workman, which comes from a larger series of related sculptures and drawings. This piece was particularly influenced by the Frenchman Leo Valentin's attempt to fly like a bird using wings. Elisabeth Frink saw this story in the news and was very inspired by it. Often Frink would have dreams about flying, about birds, about falling. These reoccurred throughout her lifetime, probably influenced by living by an airfield as a child, by the war, by seeing the falling planes. And so these themes were very present in her work and came back time and time again. It's a great privilege to be able to show so much of Elisabeth Frink's work here at Hauser Wirth Somerset. Hopefully it will give the opportunity to those who know her work to reacquaint themselves with it, and we'll be able to introduce her practice to a whole new generation.